and welcome to another episode of Our Generation on Air. My name is Alex Bullimore, and the first segment of this weird season has come to an end with a 0-0 draw against Stoke last Saturday, and now attention turns at least to the international break, a boring international break, I'm sure, if it's anything like the most recent round of international fixtures we had. Joining me on this podcast to look back on Stoke and the season so far. First, he's the self-professed interesting person on this podcast. Welcome back to Mike and Chudley.
Thank you for addressing me by my correct title. Much appreciated.
No problem. You know, once you make it known, you may as well carry on that way. Also joining me and Micah on this week's podcast is he once said he was the co-host of this podcast, so that's also pretty self-professed as well. Is Dan Lambert.
Hello, good to be back.
Yeah.
Or back on.
Lovely stuff. Now, Dan, I know you made it to the game on Saturday, so just sum up what unfolded in front of us in 30 seconds, if you can actually fill 30 seconds with events from the game, that is.
Well, firstly, obviously, it was a goalless draw, but I actually enjoyed it more so from a tactical point of view than the normal person. But yeah, it was quite end to end at times. First half, they got the better of us. Second half, Bill reacted to kind of their strengths, and then I thought we were going to score second half, but keeper pulled off a good few saves. So no, I enjoyed the game, to be fair.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't sort of. I'm not going to say it was an abnormal 0-0. I think I'm guilty of sort of remembering only the highlights that I've just watched before coming on the podcast, because actually in the game I quite enjoyed it, and after the match I wasn't really disappointed with a 0-0 draw. There was plenty of positives, like I said, in the second half, and I felt like if any team was going to nick it, balance of play, we probably had the better chances. So team headlines, one change. Tim was out and Dazelle came in. So during half time and throughout the game, we were all messing each other in our group chat. And Micah, you mentioned about changes to the team and changes to the squad and stuff like that.
You can bring this up.
So, it's a valid point. Bill made a big song and dance about learning lessons from Swansea. And, you know, to rotate the side is what we're going to do from now on. Now we've got injured players back and stuff like that. And then you make one change. Was that significant enough to be counted as, you know, rotating, or did it not really count so much?
I hear the argument, you know, that you want a regular team and you want to build that rhythm, and I think at this point in the season that's important. I just saw, because I didn't see the game at the time, I watched it back on Bank Holiday Monday. I just saw a lot of people saying that the team in the first half just looked a bit knackered. They looked a bit lethargic. That could be for a number of reasons, to be fair, but obviously, you know, to not play for a week and then to play twice in about 5 days, you know, that can be a lot to ask at times. So I was quite surprised to see only the one change. I did think he'd rotate it a little bit more, but yeah.
The kind of, I don't want to say it's an excuse, because I don't think he's really using it as an excuse so far, but tiredness can't really be brought out as a reason to sort of justify disappointing performances all the time, can it? You know, the reality of the championship seasons, you're going to play on the weekend and in the week most game weeks, you know, so that's just a fact. You can't really be going on like this, can you?
No. Sorry, Michael, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, nah, not really, because I think one thing you have to remember is that every team is in the same boat. You know, like obviously the parachute teams, you know, your Burnleys, your Sheffield United, obviously their second year down. Watford, you know, they've all got big inflated squads, but for probably 18 clubs in the Championship, you're all in the same boat, really. So you just have to get on with it.
Dan, what were you going to say on the matter?
I was just going to say, in terms of the fitness argument, I didn't I don't know who said about the fatigue, like Micah said, but I didn't think that was really an issue in the first half. I thought Stoke were just a better side. They were quite aggressive in the way they played. It was quite clear we were happy to sit off and let the likes of Aidan Flint ping balls, which I thought he was successful in the first half, and then the second half we pressed a bit higher. But yeah, I'm not too sure fatigue came into it too much. I think it'd be a different question if it was a 3-game week, but because it was an international break just after rather, and we only played midweek, I don't think fatigue was too much part for me.
Yeah, it didn't. I wouldn't have said that they were tired. I thought they just kind of, like you said, maybe okay, the Stoke got the better of them, but it was a bit slow. I thought in first half there wasn't quite the intensity we've seen from previous games, certainly at home. And away at Mill midweek, we grew into that game after a shaky first 10 minutes, but there wasn't that sort of growing into the game in the first half. In the first half, really the only player for us that was turning up was Chair, which he's done really since the Sunderland game. He's really gone on leaps and bounds. We'll cover that later on in a more sort of generic talk about what the season so far. But no one else was kind of, there wasn't much energy there, apart from perhaps as well, like Ethan Laird had a pretty good chance where he just didn't sort of give up on the ball, and eventually it came back to Johansson and was a pretty decent save from the goalkeeper, which unfortunately was a bit of the story of the match. So I'd say there's 3 chances, not just the Johansson one. There's another one that I can't quite remember. I feel like it was Ethan Laird again, perhaps, but there was a nicely worked corner that went to the back post that Laird's
back post.
Was it Pout? Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? Left back. And then obviously Jimmy Dunn, probably on reflection, should score.
He should score.
In the ground, I was willing.
The flag went up. The flag went up. It was going up as he headed it. It was going to be offside.
I was in the ground. I was giving benefit of the doubt to Dunn because of how quickly the goalkeeper came off his line. And to be fair to him, the goalkeeper had a fantastic game, didn't he?
He did. He's 22-year-old Englishman as well, so might be one to watch out for in the future. Anybody that's played Football Manager knows Joe Bursic. He's like proper wonder kid on Football Manager. Yeah, all in all, I mean, there's criticisms to be had, but I think if you look at it, Stoke started better than us. You might say we were the better team on the, in terms of the amount of sort of time we spent on top, or however you want to describe it. But then you look at it another week, we might get unlucky in that foul at the end. I think it's Powell.
Yeah.
Is it Powell? Yeah.
Yeah, he goes rushing in, doesn't he?
Yeah. I think he's trying to get out the way, but as he's trying to get out the way, he ends up tripping him up. But like I said, on another day we could get unlucky with that, and that's a pen, and we lose 1-0. So for me, 0.6 after 10 games, I'll take it. I'll take. Well,
yeah. I was going to mention the penalty, and then Campbell had a really good chance at the end as well that I thought was going in, because it just moved at that sort of speed that for some reason I just assumed was going to go in. The penalties made me slightly uneasy because there was 2 instances of pretty similar kind of fouls, if you could say. And well, they weren't given as fouls obviously on the day, but definitely shouldn't be giving EFL referees the opportunity to make a big decision like that, should we? I just thought the Powell one quite easily could have been given by another referee on another day. And you know what? Fair play for the referee saying no. But if that was a QPR player getting hit like that from behind, would probably be slightly more inclined to say that it should have been a penalty. So I'm really surprised actually that he didn't give it, because I thought in the moment that he would. Dan?
I mean, yeah, I can't really comment on the penalty. I haven't seen a replay, but I'm at the other end of the ground, so I didn't see it behind all the bodies. But The only thing I could say on that is I wonder whether in the first half when Liam Delap completely dived. I mean, I've not seen probably a worse dive in this season, the level. Maybe that was in the back of the mind of the referee going into it. I don't know, but I definitely haven't seen the replay of the power one.
Yeah, I think just Powell just seems to rush in like when he's just clearly not going to win the ball, gets the wrong side of him and there's contact and the guy goes down. But like, you know, you shouldn't be giving the referee the opportunity to make a decision like that, should we?
Yeah, it was a weird one because, like you said, he goes rushing in, and then I think he kind of just realizes that he's rushing in, and then he hesitates, tries to get out the way, and swipes his leg anyway. Probably the only blot on what I thought was a really good game for Kenneth Powell yesterday on Saturday. But yeah, you know that's the type of thing you have to be careful with over the season, and I'm not sure they do, but they do say these things kind of even themselves out. So there's a very good chance that could be us next week. Again, yeah, you know, win some, you lose some. We got quite lucky on the weekend, and we just have to take the point.
Well, you mentioned Powell had a pretty decent game. The only other sort of blot on his record from the weekend, I'd say, would be the disallowed goal. Maybe I'm looking at it again on the highlights. He gets played around quite easily, but he doesn't have a lot of support from, you know, midfield or from anyone else in blue and white hoops. So, you know, you can kind of maybe let him off. But I thought in the moment that I just thought, oh, blimey heck, if they've got in that easily, that was quite early on in the game. We don't need that going on throughout the match, right when Powell's sort of getting better and better on average each game. But, you know, it was quite rightly disallowed, so we don't really have to worry about it that much. But, you know, in the moment, I thought I was quite worried about it. But after that, he had a pretty decent game again, and it wasn't really a threat after that.
I do think that's... Sorry, go on, Dan. Go on.
I was just going to say, I mean, I thought he had a good game. I thought that both the fullbacks first half struggled with the fact that they were quite aggressive with their wing backs. I mean, Wilmot was almost a winger at times. I think had Wilmot not been playing there and they'd had natural right wing back, I think Powell probably could have been troubled a bit more. But no, he had a decent game in fairness, and he grew into it. And like you said, Millwall was his best performance of the season, and hopefully he can kind of kick on from there.
Micah, you were going to say?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, Alex, I do think that's a valid concern because I think he's been caught in that kind of position a couple of times, caught between, you know, the wide player and the guy on that inside half space. I think against Middlesbrough for the second goal, I think he got caught for it as well. But you know, you might just put that down to that's just part of the system. You know, when your wing backs are going to get so high, sometimes you know they're going to be left with two men over, especially when we don't really play with wide players. But yeah, no, the fullbacks, I really like the fullbacks. I think we've got two really good gems. I know it's becoming cliche to say it now, but you know, had they been with us last season, you know, it might have been a very different end to the season, really. But yes, it's exciting. I think the team is really starting to gel together, even without scoring on Saturday.
Yeah, because there's moments when we played some really good stuff, to be honest, and like at times they did try and overdo it. Me and Dan had the conversation about XG on the last podcast whenever that went out, and it felt like they were trying to overdo it a little bit at times in the second half. There was times when you just thought, get it in the box. But also, as a side note on that, when we have Tyler Roberts up top by himself, I feel like we have less of a in the box presence for crosses. So is that something that we can look into / consider?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought he was decent early first half. I thought his link plays very good. I think on the level. I can understand why Bill went with Roberts, a bit more of a fluid front three. Kind of don't really want to play to Aidan Flint's strengths in terms of Dykes having to play aerially against him. Obviously, I'm sure we'll touch on it, but Dykes had a good impact second half. But I could see why he did it kind of more fluid front three, but it definitely was a better performance when we moved to a 4-2-3-1 two wingers out wide and Dykes more of a focal point.
Well, you know, as soon as you've mentioned it, we may as well bring it up. And there's a topic of conversation that's going to put a big smile across my face. Lyndon Dykes come on and really, he did make a difference, and we were much better for his introduction. Pretty much straight away, he made a pretty dynamic run across the back line and got in behind them. So I was really happy, even though, again, it didn't result in him actually scoring any goals, but his performance was really positive.
Yeah, I agree. I think he made an impact. I think for me with Roberts, I like Roberts as a player. I think he's really good. I think he gives a dynamic that we don't really have anywhere else in the team, just in terms of that sort of athleticism mixed with that technical ability. But for me, he's not a natural striker. I don't think he has that striker's instinct. And, you know, I'm guessing really he wasn't put up there to sort of be Thierry Henry or whatever. But like, I understand what he gives to us playing as a nine, but I think we just lack a little bit, like you said, Alex, of that in the box presence. Dykes' impact was good. I thought he had a good game. For me, it's a weird one with Dykes, because I think a lot of the times he actually has his best games for us where he doesn't score. Which is funny because he's a striker and we need him to score. Realistically, we need 15 from him this season. Like if we want to make, we'll talk, I'm sure we'll get on to expectations for the season, but if we want to make the playoffs, we need him to chip in with about 15, which I think he's capable of, to be honest with you. I don't think he's going to go a whole season not scoring. You know, he's got 12 and 9 for us over, I don't even know how many games he's played for us, but 12 goals and 9 goals. So he's not going to go a whole season without scoring, is he?
No, so, and last season before his injury, it looked like he was on track to get over 15.
Yeah, so it's not impossible for him. And, you know, people will have their frustrations with him. Some I think are fair, some I think are a bit harsh. But it's like we've said on the pod countless times, like he's going to be our 9 for the season. Like there's no magic money tree. There's nobody coming in January unless we sell somebody. Like we have to try and make it work for him. We have to put the ball in a position for him where he's going to score.
Yeah. You know, as we were saying, we quite enjoyed the game, but if you did watch the highlights on YouTube, you would have probably thought that this isn't much of a classic match, considering that 10 of those seconds on that video were dedicated to just a view of the two benches at one point, which is a pretty significant chunk of time when the video is only like 2 minutes long or whatever. So, you know, this is the funny thing about those highlights. I kind of look at them and go, there was so many more sort of things that I would consider a pretty big chance, but then you haven't included it for whatever reason. But I still enjoyed the game regardless. In the first half, though, I think it's important that we mention the centre-backs. I thought they were quite shaky. They had a couple of moments where it didn't quite, you know, failing to clear the ball and letting Stoke in a little bit. And then they grew into the game, I guess, and were better in the second half. But I really wasn't impressed with what I saw in the first half. And there seems to be a bit of a debate, as there probably always is on Twitter and stuff like that. And people seem to really like Balogun, which is fine. Like, I think he's quite a capable player, but I think you're kind of burying your head in your sand a little bit if you thought that was a perfect performance from them. And I kind of, you know, there was a lot of talk about how important they were to winning at Millwall and how they were probably, you know, the more suitable of our 4 centre-backs for a game against Millwall. Well, the weekend, I kind of thought this is where I'd quite like to have Dickie and Clark Salter playing instead.
Yeah, I can agree on that somewhat. I thought first half more so in possession against Stoke's press. They forced us long a lot of the time, and I thought it was too easy at times because obviously we had Roberts up top, and let's be honest, Roberts isn't winning an aerial duel against Aidan Flint. I thought there was one moment I remembered that Balogun was a bit shaky in possession. I think they had a moment where they transitioned on us, I don't know. I don't remember them being awful first half. I thought they were. I thought they were right. I thought Dunn was pretty good, to be fair, as well as Balogun second half. But like you say, I wouldn't have them as my starting partnership. I think with Balogun, it's probably we've got 2 clean sheets with him. But I think Dickie's obviously a better player for me. But he's good. He's good cover. And yeah, I mean, if they can keep keeping clean sheets, then they must be doing something right.
The only other thing to say about that, though, is, Stoke were, probably better in the first half, but their goal scoring threat significantly dipped in the second. And Millwall were, well, really rubbish for the whole game. So, they've played 2 attacks that haven't really, threatened us that much in 2 games.
They threatened us in set pieces, didn't they? Stoke a lot. And I think that kind of, I mean, I'm not too sure that Dickie's not probably the best of the 4 aerially, and I don't think Clark Salter is either. So I think they had their advantages in that sense. I get what you're saying though. I still don't think I'd have any of those 2 as my preferred that partnership.
Dickie and Dunn faced Watford and Middlesbrough, a much better Middlesbrough in that second half, and I just feel it's just 2 games. There's no need to read into it too much, but I thought first half they were. I wasn't too impressed anyway. The other thing to mention from this game is the halftime substitution. Dazelle got hooked at halftime. Was he? He's come back into the side. He's played pretty well recently, and he's the one change that as we mentioned prior to the game. Was he really that bad, or was this just sort of necessity? He was sort of the worst of a bad bunch and had to be sacrificed to make a change.
I think to be fair, having watched the press conference after the game, I think Bill said it wasn't anything to do with Dazal's performance. He just needed to switch someone out, and Sam Field at the base of that midfield. Wow, goodness me. Sam Field at the base of midfield. He's looking a lot better. Not that he was bad as a 8 or a box to box or whatever his role was, but I just think he's a bit more natural in that position. That, in my opinion, has kind of coincided with Steph playing his best football for about 9-10 months. To be honest with you, Steph's looking really good. So it was 2 players that are really in form that have started the season well. Not that Dazelle hasn't started the season well, but I think, in that situation, you sacrifice Dazelle over Johansson and Field.
Yeah, I completely agree. So that's kind of, unless you guys have got anything else to cover from the Stoke match, I think we've looked at everything. Anything else you guys wanted to mention? No? Dan? No?
No, nothing from me.
Lovely stuff then. So moving on then, we'll just take a quick look back over the season so far. Is it 10 games that we've played? Feels like it's 10, isn't it?
It is 10 games, correct.
10 league games, 1 cup match. So far, so something. One, massive positive this segment of the season has been the performances of Ilias Chair, specifically after the Sunderland game and including that game. I really feel like he's stepped up and he's kind of leading the side and dragging us forward with much more eye-catching performances than last season. And it reminds me a lot about the things that you talked about, Micah, in your little article about him prior to the season kicking off. So how pleased do you see that he's actually the promise is actually getting somewhere?
I'm more pleased about that plug, to be honest, Alec. Thank you very much. It's really exciting. I think the start of the season was a bit shaky, but one thing that I noticed with him, which maybe hasn't happened in recent years, is that he, even when he hasn't played well, he still managed to get numbers. So I don't think he was at his best against Middlesbrough at home. I think that was more of a Willock performance. But I think he's come out that game with 2 assists. And I might be wrong, but I think he's surpassed his assist total from last season. I think he's got 5 this season and he got 4 last season. So you're looking at it and there's less hesitation, there's a bit more conviction, there's a bit more risk taking. Even for the the done miss. I know it ended up being offside, but it's come to him on his left foot. A season ago, maybe 2 seasons ago, maybe he checks back, maybe he cuts into his right. There wasn't much hesitation. Just a quick dink with his left foot into Dunn. It's a gorgeous ball. Dunn should score, but if he's offside, he's offside. So I'm really excited. I mean, it still looks like he's got another gear that he can get to be honest. And he's probably been our player of the season thus far, joint with probably Willock. So I'm over the moon, to be honest with you. Long may it continue.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing for him is with all the breaks and stuff like that in this early part of the season, if he can come back from international duty and really hit the ground running, unlike when he came back from AFCON last year, then, we're in for a pretty good season with him. Dan, how do you think Bill sort of got on so far? First 10 games as a Football League manager.
I'd say pretty well. Obviously, it's still early days. I think in terms of the system, I think it's a good stage now. I think he did quite well to implement it quickly. I know he had a pre-season, obviously, but it was quite a short one in terms of the amount of games. And I think after that Palace game, we were a bit like not hesitant, but when we played a bit of a Premier League opposition, we got beat quite easily. There was a little bit of maybe worry that not everything was in place, but no, it's been pleasing so far. I think from his point of view, particularly in the game on Saturday, I think it was quite pleasing. In the post-match interview, he was quite honest about being flexible, and I think that's something we wanted when we wanted a manager after Warburton. We wanted someone that could be more flexible in situations, adapt to opposition teams, and I think we've seen that particularly in that game, but the back end of a few other games. So I think if he can be a bit more flexible and carry on the way we are, I see no reason why we can't aim perhaps higher than we thought maybe we were going to.
Yep, the change at half time from the weekend is something that's a real big positive. Like you said, he's certainly I guess he's getting more confident and feels like he's more able to do that sort of thing. So yeah, long may that continue. Quite happy to see him make proactive substitutions rather than wait sort of to 60 minutes. If it's not working, it just isn't working. So going into October, 7 games to play. Bristol City, Sheffield United, Reading, Luton, Cardiff, Wigan and Birmingham. Micah, what are you expecting from these games?
It's going to be a little tougher, I think, especially with the fact that the games are pretty much Saturday, Wednesday for pretty much the whole of October. Bristol City will be interesting. They've had a bit of a mixed start. That's a decent side. We all know what Naki Wells is capable of. And then Sheffield United, that will be a real big test for us. We've already gone to Watford and won. So we might feel like, we have a right to go there and, play on our terms and hold our own. So it'll be interesting to see that.
And we also, and I know I keep mentioning them, but I am fascinated by Reading's season so far.
That's going to be a fun game.
To get to play them is going to be interesting. You also have the gift of 6 points, or at least 3 points in this game from Nathan Jones and Luton.
Goodness. We might need those 3 points by then based off the amount of games. But it'll be interesting because I think Amos will be back. And I think obviously he played 1 game, but I thought Amos looked really good against Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
I think he gives us that little bit extra legs in midfield. And obviously Clark Salter and Taylor Richards to come back. So it'll be a tougher month, I think, but I think we're better equipped for it than we were the first 2 months.
Yeah. And the other one to sort of just note at the end of the month is Birmingham as well. They seem to be under John Eustace, slightly turning a corner, beating West Brom as well. A pretty impressive result for them. I know obviously we are missing, like you mentioned, Amos, and he'll be back soon. Dickie and Clark Salter and Richards as well. But from the weekend, I just kind of thought that the bench looked a little bit light in terms of sort of an actual game-changing, I don't want to say talent because that's the wrong word, but a game-changing player. Armstrong not included on the bench in the last 2 games. Bond's come back in, so that's not worked out as much as most fans would have hoped. Dan, are we missing something off the bench?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Taylor Richards. I think he's that game changer for me. I've watched him a couple of times last season before this one. Really impressed with what I've seen. I think that he's a different profile and he can carry the ball. We saw briefly at Blackburn. Obviously, he was getting up to speed, but he looked sharpish. And he's that more of a Chair Willock type where they can get on the ball and make something happen. I think keep him fit and he could be big for us. On the Armstrong thing, I'm not too worried about that. I think it was quite smart to put him in the under 21s or whatever, get him a few goals, get him a bit of confidence back because he has missed some fairly big chances at senior level, and I imagine he's kicking himself for that. And there's a too much hype around him for me still. I think Twitter went crazy after he scored a hat-trick. Apparently he's the new answer to our striker problem or whatever. So yeah, no, Taylor Richards is the one for me, and Armstrong, I think we need to bed him in slowly still.
Yeah, well, that striker debate will rage on, and I'm sure we'll all be really interested in it by the time it reaches to January. We won't be utterly sick of it. So we've run out of things to talk about this week. The last thing I'll say, I guess, is that we have finished this first part of the season in 6th place. And, you know, that is very, very handy indeed. Who would have thought after that first game against Blackburn, which was pretty, I'm not going to say dire, but a bit of a sludge, that we've ended up 6th place going into the first international break. So, yeah, very handy indeed. And there's plenty of positive signs. So, yeah, hopefully more of that to come. In terms of what we'll be doing over the next couple of days, well, we hopefully will have something for you next Monday. So keep an eye on your podcast feed for that. And of course, subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, and give us a review as well if you are able to. All of us are on Twitter. We've all written stuff, I guess, recently. You can go back and read Micah's thoughts on Ilias Chair from earlier on in the season. You can go and read Dan. Dan, what was your latest article, quickly?
The Swansea review, I think.
Swansea review. So
you can go in. Relevant now.
I mean, it's not relevant, but if you like reading tactical analysis, then there's, I don't know, quite a few words on tactical analysis for you. So yeah, follow all of us on Twitter. It's the easiest way to catch whatever we're doing in terms of writing stuff, and follow our generation on Twitter as well. So, with nothing else to plug, with no games to come next week, I'd like to say thank you to Micah and Dan for joining me on this podcast. Thank you to all you listeners for listening, and until next time, come on you Arse.